Our show starts in less than 2 minutes. Greetings, listeners. We would like to invite you to sleep with us.
No.
So crawl under the covers.
No.
What?
We are not inviting anyone to sleep with us. What in the world, Lorenzo?
What's the matter?
Well, the matter is this is a family-friendly show. When you go around inviting people to sleep with us, well, you're going to get the wrong idea. What is the idea anyway?
A marketing ploy.
Marketing ploy?
Yes, you said it yourself. Our show is the cure for insomnia.
Well, yeah, I did say that.
Well, people that can't sleep can tune in.
Oh, I see. And fall asleep while we're talking.
While you're talking, yes. That's how we can sell our show, as a sleep aid.
Yeah, that's not quite what I had in mind when I was dreaming up this show.
It's called promotion.
A sleep aid, huh? Do you really think that's the only reason somebody would listen to us?
To you, yes.
Wait, what do you mean to me?
You do go an and on.
No, that's definitely not true. Is it true?
Sometimes,
I do?
a little bit, but I don't mind. Much.
Well, maybe you put people to sleep too, Lorenzo.
Never.
Good evening, folks. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you, one that will provide several hours of pleasurable relaxation and diversion for you and your family. Did you fail to dress up for tonight's show? No tie, an old shirt and slacks, a house dress? Well, don't give it a thought. We're glad you came as you are. We just want you to enjoy yourselves. We hope you'll make this a weekly visit. Bring the family, bring your friends. A gay, pleasant evening for all. We hope you have a wonderful time. Come back soon.
This week, we're deviating a bit from our original flight plan. When I set out on this series, my intent was, well, and actually it still is, to study the great movies of Hollywood's golden era, to see if I think they're great, and to look at what makes them great. Our movie today, 1943's Flesh and Fantasy, is not great, but it is fun. So why not go where the fun takes us and do a little exploring? This is actually part one of a double feature. Today we're going to be focused on Flesh and Fantasy, but next week we're going to take a look at its precursor, 1942's Tales of Manhattan. If you like Twilight-Zonie-type anthologies, well, this one's for you. We're journeying into a wondrous land of imagination on this week's episode of the Vintage Century Idle Hour.
Please welcome our host, Jennifer Passariello.
Thanks, Lorenzo. Hey, how's your week been going?
Okay,
Do you have any news, anything noteworthy going on?
I just started reading a new book.
Oh yeah? Me too.
What book are you reading? Maybe we are reading the same one.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun? If we were reading the same book, we could talk about it together.
I know you like to talk about everything.
Yeah, well, I'll go first. I just started reading The Notebook, A History of Thinking on Paper by Roland Allen.
Oh, I'm definitely not reading that.
No? Well, so far it's pretty good. I mean, it's all about how people in history have used notebooks and journals to fuel creative thinking.
Oh,
You've probably noticed all the notebooks that I have on my desk.
yes, they are everywhere.
Well, I mean, I really only have 3. I keep a faith-based commonplace book for my things about prayer and faith journey. I keep a learning journal for random things that I learn and I want to use someday. And then, of course, I keep a notebook for my ideas for this show.
Oh,
You know, I spend a lot of time every week with my notebooks, and I really enjoy it. Yeah, so my hope for this book by Roland Allen is that I get some new ideas for how to use the notebooks that I already have.
I don't like that kind of book.
Oh, no?
No.
Well, what book are you reading, Lorenzo?
The Flame and the Flower.
The Flame and the Flower. Is that... Let me take a look at that. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's a romance novel. The Flame and the Flower by Kathleen Woodwess.
Yes. It's a classic.
A classic?
Yes. And very moving.
Wow. Well, can you read us a passage? Maybe give us a flavor for this classic?
Of course. Their love was a fire that could not be extinguished. It burned bright even in the darkest of nights. She was the flame, and he was the flower. Together they made a perfect storm of passion. She was wild and untamed. She was a tempest that could not be controlled.
A wild, untamed tempest.
Ah, yes. I hope one day to meet a lady like this.
You know, Lorenzo, there are so many great books out there. I hope you read other things too.
Could there ever be a better book than The Flame and the Flower?
100% yes.
I don't believe it.
Believe it, Lorenzo. Believe it. This week's Silver Screen Adventure takes us to some kind of strange places. Flesh and Fantasy is an anthology of uncanny stories. Now, there are actually 3 stories in this film. We're going to get to those when we do our review. But let's talk a little bit about the structure of this film first. All of the stories have one thing in common. They rely on a storytelling device called the plot twist. Yeah, I know you're already familiar with plot twists. I mean, if you've seen the 1999 film The Sixth Sense, well, you're already familiar with what may be the most famous and shocking plot twist of all time. At least it was at the time of its release. But plot twists aren't all that rare. A lot of my favorite stories have them. One of my favorite plot twists in film, besides The Sixth Sense, is the twist in the 2001 film The Others. I love a good ghost story, and here we have 2 of them, The Sixth Sense and The Others, and both of those stories have intriguing and surprising plot twists. So, what is a plot twist? Let's nail down a solid definition. A plot twist is an unforeseen shift in the plot line that alters the audience's prior expectations of the story and reconfigures what they thought the meaning of the story was. In short, it's a surprising development. Plot twists sort of create this narrative whiplash. When a plot twist is really good, it sort of creates that same feeling as that carnival ride that I love. What is the name of that ride? Oh, the Scrambler. Do you know what ride I'm talking about? You'll see them at state fairs, and sometimes you'll find them in theme parks where you get in this little car and you're moving in one direction, and then all of a sudden, shazam, you're moving in another direction. I love that kind of ride. And when we've got a really good plot twist in a story, it creates that same kind of feeling. Now, the problem with plot twists in this day and age is we've almost come to expect them. Audiences today are a lot more sophisticated than the audiences of 1943. I mean, sometimes we can see a plot twist coming from a mile away, in which case the surprise element is gone. But even if we aren't always surprised by a plot twist, they can still be a lot of fun because they can still create suspense, even if all that suspense is for is to help us figure out if we're right in our guesses or not. Now, I just sort of brainstormed some common plot twists that I've seen in stories. There are many more than this, but, again, here are just a few examples. They were dead all along. Okay, that's sort of a reference to The Sixth Sense and The Others. Many stories have that kind of a plot twist. Here's another one. The bad guy was really a hero. The mean, crusty person really has a heart of gold. It was all just a dream. Then we may have a plot twist where circumstances radically disrupt the plan. Or maybe then a miracle happens. Or we find that fate will not be denied. Or how about this one? She's actually a mannequin. Now, I know that one is kind of specific. I'm sort of referring here to a Twilight Zone episode. There was a Twilight Zone episode called The After Hours, and the plot twist there was that this main character was actually a mannequin. Twilight Zone is loaded with plot twists. Okay, well, there are many more examples that we could come up with, but the point is, plot twists are fun, which brings us back to flesh and fantasy, which, listen, it's not intended to be great art. This is not a masterpiece, but it's a fun ride. Okay, so let's get to the stars of this show. The bigger names here include Edward G. Robinson, Charles Boyer, Robert Cummings, Barbara Stanwyck, Betty Field, and Thomas Mitchell. Our director here is Julien Duvivier. And now, how about the Academy Award stats? No Academy Award stats for this one. No real critical acclaim that I can find. Apparently, Duvivier was inspired to do this film by the success of his other anthology film, Tales of Manhattan, that had come out in 1942. Remember, we're going to visit Tales of Manhattan in next week's episode. Okay, so there's some backstory on our film this week. Let's take a brief musical break. And, we have weird tales this week, so I'm going to see if I can find some weird music. Anyway, when we come back, we'll do a deep dive into the 1943 film, Flesh and Fantasy.
Attention listeners, may I please have your attention? The following section of our show contains a number of spoilers.
Yeah, folks, there will be spoilers, as usual. I'm kind of famous for my spoilers, but this time I'm not going to give everything away. These stories don't have a lot of depth to them beyond the fun plot twist, so, if you want to watch the film, I'm going to leave those plot twists for your discovery for the most part. Some of the movies that we've covered in this series are so deep that even if you know what the plot line is, it's still worth watching. But Flesh and Fantasy doesn't have a lot of layers. It's just a fun film. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to only do a deep dive into one of the stories. Okay, so I'll briefly describe the 3 stories. For 2 of those stories, I won't give away the plot twist, but for the third one, I will. So if you want to completely skip this section and just get to my rating, you can do that. But that's how I'm going to kind of do the review this time around. Now, there is a frame for the stories in this film. In the opening scene, we see two men in the library of a gentleman's club talking. One man's been having this kind of crazy dream, and they start talking about it, and the other man says, "Hey, I've just read a book of strange stories that sort of pertain to your situation." And then he starts reading these stories to this other gentleman. It's kind of a weird frame, to be honest. I don't think it's necessary in this film, but they also do provide a little bit of commentary about the stories, so it is what it is. But anyway, let's talk about our three stories. So story number one is called The Masked Ball. And I'm going to set that one aside because that's the story that we're going to go all in on. It's my favorite of the three, so we're going to spend a little bit more time with that one. Story number two is called The Palm Reader's Prophecy. So in this story, a psychic palm reader is at a party, and he's making some very eerie predictions that seem like there's no way they could come true, but they do come true. Okay, that's not the plot twist. So in one of the guest palms, he does a palm reading, and in one of the guest palms, he finds a very disturbing future. Okay, so this guest's name is Marshall Tyler, and he discovers in reading this guy's palm that Tyler is going to kill someone. Now, this is very alarming to Tyler, and he becomes obsessed with this idea. He can't sleep, he can't work, he can't focus because all he's thinking about is the fact that he's going to kill somebody. So he decides that the answer to this problem is, let's just get it over with. He wants to find somebody to kill, get it over with, and move on with his life. But who will he kill? That is the question that's answered with our plot twist. But this is as far as we're going to go with this story, so you'll just have to watch to find out. Okay, for story number three, we've got The High Wire Dream. And in this story, we've got a circus performer. He's billed as the drunken gentleman of the high wire. So that's right, he's a high wire walker. He's got kind of this little shtick that he does where he walks out, he's got a tuxedo on, he holds a wine bottle and he pretends like he's drunk and very wobbly. And then he gets on the high wire act. Okay, well, this guy has a dream. And the dream is that he falls right in the middle of his act. So he falls off the high wire. He sees this woman with very distinct and unusual earrings scream. Okay, so he associates himself falling off the high wire with this woman wearing these earrings. Okay, well, he is so disturbed by this dream that he starts losing his confidence on the wire. He starts to, doubt his ability to do his signature move. So his signature move is he's on one high wire and then he jumps down to a second wire that's 10 feet below. And he does this without a net. Now, apparently he's done this a million times. He's done it successfully. But now all of a sudden he's afraid. He doesn't trust himself. He associates the dream, the fall, and this woman all together. Well, wouldn't you know, he's on a ship and he encounters that woman in real life. She's got the earrings, it's a whole thing. So this is definitely the woman. Well, they fall in love. They have this love affair. So our question is she bad luck? Are their fates intertwined? Well, you'll have to watch to find out. Now, stories 2 and 3 are similar in that they explore this question of whether we're in control of our destinies or not. In the palm reader's prophecy, a man is told that he's going to kill somebody. Well, he ultimately does kill someone. All right, that's not the spoiler. Okay, that's not the spoiler. That's not the important part of the story. But he does kill somebody, right? And when he does kill this person, he says, it wasn't his fault. It was written in his palm, and therefore his fate was sealed. There was some strange thing within him, he says, that forced his hand. But is that true? Well, if it is true, then we don't have any agency. We're just pawns, right? But of course, that isn't true. He had choices at every step. In the high wire dream, the circus performer's dream is a kind of prophecy. And in that dream, he falls, he sees a woman scream. So is it inevitable that when these two things come together, the high wire and the woman screaming, that tragedy will ensue? In both of these stories, the men try in their own ways to take some semblance of control over their destinies with very differing results. Okay, but what about the masked ball story? This one is kind of an odd outlier. It's very different. It doesn't deal with that kind of theme. And to be honest, it's inferior to the other two stories. I think the other two stories are better. They're more interesting in some ways. And yet, I like this one the best. I like the masked ball story the best. It's got kind of a fairy tale quality to it. Every time I see clips of Flesh and Fantasy, or I see pictures, movie stills from the film, they're always taken from the masked ball. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's kind of a weird setting. People are wearing masks. It's kind of unsettling. It's Mardi Gras. There's a lot of drama, a lot of interesting visuals there. And maybe that's part of why I like this one so much too. But it also has kind of a Cinderella type quality to the story as well. So anyway, this is the one we're going to do our little deep dive in. All right, so when this story opens, we meet Henrietta. And Henrietta is a lonely seamstress. She's kind of homely, she's poor, and she's kind of bitter. She doesn't have the greatest personality. Well, Henrietta is secretly in love with this young law student who's very moody, to be honest, and handsome. And he's completely oblivious when it comes to Henrietta. Apparently, they encounter each other in the square every day, but he doesn't even notice her. He doesn't see her. Now, there's this unsettling little episode at the beginning of this story where a drowned man is pulled out of the water. And then a crowd kind of gathers to see, what's going on here. So Henrietta and the law student end up standing side by side. Well, bless her little heart, she tries to make some small talk with him. She smiles at him. He pretty much just ignores her. And she begins to think that maybe the drowned man is on to something, that maybe he's the lucky one because he's dead. Well, she's about to jump in and drown herself when, all of a sudden, a mysterious man shows up. He gives her a mask of a beautiful woman, and he tells her to wear it to the masked ball. But she must return it at midnight. Okay, well, so she puts on this mask of this beautiful woman, so at least for a few hours, she can look pretty. She's got the mask. She decides to wear one of the dresses that she's been working on for one of her clients. So she's got a beautiful gown on. She walks around. People are commenting on how beautiful she is. Now, this is a bit strange, I have to say, because she's very obviously wearing a mask. Her mouth is not moving. We can see that she's got like these rubber band things keeping the mask on, so everybody can see that this is a mask. And yet they're treating her as if she looks like the mask that she's wearing. They have no idea what she looks like underneath that mask. But anyway, we can see that people are starting to treat her differently than they've treated her before. Before she was invisible. Now she's not. People are seeing her. Well, the longer that she's wearing this mask, the more we see her personality start to change. Oh, and I should also mention that she encounters a law student, and he also is now taken with her. So suddenly he's noticing her, right? Because she's wearing this mask. Well, her personality starts to change dramatically. There's a softness to her now. That bitterness is gone. And now we see this very kind, selfless person with a heart of gold. They fall in love. Yes, this is very sudden. They're only together for a couple of hours, but they fall in love. And she tells him at midnight that, beneath the mask, she's really ugly. He doesn't believe her. She removes the mask and, plot twist, she's not ugly after all. Her face has conformed to the beauty of the mask. Now, why has this happened? Because it was her selfishness and bitterness that was making her ugly. And when those were gone, her natural beauty could come out. At least that's what the story seems to be implying. But was it really just because she was bitter that she was unattractive? Or was it also because the people were treating her pretty badly? So, it's the case of what comes first. Her being treated badly and then becoming bitter, or her being bitter and that's why people were treating her badly. I don't know. But, when she has shed her bitterness, now she becomes pretty stunning and beautiful. Here's the interesting thing about this. She gets the law student in the end, but he's a creep. He totally ignored her when she was playing. So I don't know really what there is that's great about him. He's good looking, so she sees that in him. But other than that, I don't know. I don't think he's that great of a catch. Okay, now what about the mysterious stranger who gives her the mask? Well, we never really find out who he was, but we do see a mask of his face in a shop window. That's actually how the story ends. We'll never know who that man was. Now, in this case, I feel like we could all see the plot twist coming from a mile away. I've seen this whole face conforms to mask idea before. And here I have to make another reference to the Twilight Zone because that's just the way I do. There is a Twilight Zone episode called The Masks that also takes place during Mardi Gras, and the same thing happens. The people wearing their masks, their faces conform to those masks. But we have to remember that Flesh and Fantasy was first. We're in 1943 here. That Twilight Zone episode came out more than 20 years later. So the point goes to Flesh and Fantasy for that plot line. Okay, so here we have the stories of Flesh and Fantasy. Let's take a brief intermission, and then we'll get to my official review. Back in a moment.
Yes, folks, it's intermission time. So how about taking a break? Get out and stretch a little and relax before the show begins again. And why not make it refreshment time, too? We have lots of tasty, delicious treats waiting for you at the refreshment center. There's hot popcorn, so golden good and fresh out of the popper. And all kinds of refreshing ice-cold soft drinks. Sizzling hot dogs just bursting with juicy goodness. Ice cream so smooth and delicious, you'll hanker for more. Plus, all the most popular candy bars and many other favorite treats. So why not visit the refreshment center now? Our courteous attendants are ready and waiting to serve you with a wide and wonderful variety of good things to eat and drink. So step right up and make yourself at home.
Attention listeners, it is time to learn how Jennifer rates movies.
Our scale is pretty simple. We classify a film as either unwatchable, watchable, or rewatchable, or somewhere in between. An unwatchable film is really bad, so bad in fact that it's hard to sit through. It's either boring or stupid or cringy or just plain terrible. Now, a watchable film is one that's basically okay. It gives you something to do for a couple of hours, may have some interesting and entertaining parts, but it doesn't really leave a strong impression on you. A rewatchable film, on the other hand, is one that's so good, so meaningful, so impactful, so riveting, so thought-provoking, so emotionally charged, and/or so beautifully produced that you would invest the time necessary to watch it again. So there we have it. Our scale is unwatchable, watchable, or rewatchable. Now, I have a worksheet that helps me calculate the rating. I essentially award points, or what I call diamonds, to films based on 5 factors: story, character development, writing, so that would show up in a film as dialogue or narration, pace, and discussability. Now, when I'm considering discussability, what I'm basically doing is answering the question, does the story have enough depth to explore and analyze through discussion? Because, that's the fun part.
It's that it.
Yes. No. One last thing about my rating system.
I thought we were done.
This is my system. I'm not a film student. I don't really know anything about film. The factors I built in are those that I care about. I don't watch or read other reviews, so nothing influences the way I feel about a film beyond the film itself.
It's that it.
One more last thing.
This overview is dragging on.
When reviewing a film, I try really hard to stay within the confines of the story. I don't consider the historical context of the film, when it was released, and I don't care about the biographies of the stars or the filmmakers or anything like that. The story itself is the thing that I care about.
It's that it.
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure of it. That's it.
Well, then, let's get on with the show.
For our rating, I'm making this simple and evaluating this film in its totality, not splitting it down by story. Now, the stories had different writers and different actors, of course, but they all have the same director, Julien Duvivier. So, let's break this down. Story. Was this an interesting and entertaining story worth telling? Yeah, sure, these were entertaining stories. There's nothing especially memorable about them, but they were fun. And they did make a run at allegory, so I'm going to give this 3 diamonds. Character development. Were the characters dimensional? Did their actions ring true? I'm going to go with 2 diamonds here, which I know is kind of a low rating. But these characters were really secondary to the plot twist in these stories. There wasn't a lot of dimension there. Writing. Was the dialogue beautiful, funny, poignant, and/or thought-provoking? Not really. There's nothing really memorable or special here. And a couple of the lines bordered on cheesy. So, for example, when Henrietta discovers that she's become beautiful beneath the mask, she tells the law student that the 2 of them had bumped into each other many times in the past. And when he says, "Gee, I wonder why I never saw you," she says, with great feeling, "Because I didn't see myself." Yeah, sort of cheesy. At the same time, there was nothing in the writing that got in the way of any of these stories, so I'm going to go with 3 diamonds, middle of the road. Pace. At what speed did the story unfold? I'm going to give this a 5 diamond rating. I thought the pace was really good. It was just right. Each story is about 30 minutes long, which was appropriate. I think any longer or shorter would have been off a bit. So 5 diamonds on the pace. And then finally, discussability. Does the story have enough depth to explore and analyze through discussion? I'm given this 3 diamonds. There are a few prompts in here for discussion, but I think we covered most of them right here in this episode. There's not a whole lot more that we need to explore. So I'm going to say 3 diamonds, very limited discussability in my opinion. And that brings us to a score of 3.2 diamonds. That puts Flesh and Fantasy in the category of watchable.
And now it's time for Idel, our trivia.
Well, we introduced this segment in episode 6, and I kind of like it. It's fun, right?
How do you define fun?
Well, here's this week's question. One of the stories in Flesh and Fantasy, this would be the second one, the one with the guy who's told he's going to kill somebody, is based on a story entitled Lord Arthur Saville's Crime by 19th century Irish poet and playwright Oscar Wilde. Well, several films have been based on the work of Oscar Wilde. Here are 3 films from Hollywood's golden age. Which one is not based on a story by Oscar Wilde? A. 1938's The Lady Vanishes. B. 1944's The Canterville Ghost. Or C. 1945's The Picture of Dorian Gray. Take a moment to think this one through. Time's up. What do you think, Lorenzo? Which of the following was not based on a story by Oscar Wilde? A. The Lady Vanishes, B. The Canterville Ghost, or C. The Picture of Dorian Gray?
The question is too easy. You need to challenge the people more. You are insulting them.
Yeah, well, what's the answer?
I'm embarrassed by the question. But, of course, the answer is The Lady Vanishes. What's that sound?
That, my friend, signifies a wrong answer.
No way.
The Lady Vanishes is an Alfred Hitchcock film based on a novel by Ethel Lena White. That novel is called, what is it? Oh, The Wheel Spins. The Wheel Spins. So Oscar Wilde did not write that one. Hey, Lorenzo, I need to add this to our movie list. The Lady Vanishes. Hitchcock received the New York Film Critics Circle Award for Best Director for that film, and that was the only time he received an award for his directing. That's kind of hard to believe. Anyway, both The Canterville Ghost and The Picture of Dorian Gray were based on the work of Oscar Wilde. Now you know.
This is a stupid game.
We were just on the topic of Oscar Wilde. Well, that brings to mind my favorite short story written by him. It's the saddest, sweetest story, and it actually explores some pretty interesting themes. Now, some people regard this story as a comedy, and yeah, I guess it is kind of a dark comedy, but I just think it's beautiful and sad. It's called The Nightingale and the Rose, and it was included in Wilde's 1888 book of short stories called The Happy Prince and Other Tales. I thought I would read it.
Wait.
What? What is it?
Surely you're not going to read to the people.
Well, I thought I would.
Oh no.
What?
That is the very worst thing you can do in a podcast.
Is it?
Yes.
Well, where did you hear that?
On a podcast. They said that people don't like to be read to.
Maybe you misinterpreted them. I mean, what did they say exactly?
They said the words, do not ever, 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 under any circumstances, read to your audience.
Yeah, but they probably meant not to read boring things. This is not boring. This is a beautiful story.
They went on to say that it is better to die than to read to your audience.
Well, I'm doing it. I mean, listen, at this point of the show, people have probably already dropped off anyway.
What? No one is listening. Why do we do this show?
Please settle in, any listeners still with us, for Oscar Wilde's The Nightingale and the Rose. She said that she would dance with me if I brought her red roses, cried the young student. But in all my garden there is no red rose. From her nest in the oak tree, a nightingale heard him, and she looked out through the leaves and wondered. No red rose in all my garden, he cried, and his beautiful eyes filled with tears. Ah, on what little things does happiness depend? I have read all that the wise men have written, and all the secrets of philosophy are mine, yet for want of a red rose, my life is made wretched. Wait, Lorenzo, what is that sound?
The people are snoring.
You are just going to ruin my fun, aren't you?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, listen, maybe this would be a good time for you to take a nap, Lorenzo. I'll wake you when it's over.
Okay.
Okay, back to the story. Here at last is a true lover, said the nightingale. Night after night have I sung of him, though I knew him not. Night after night have I told his story to the stars, and now I see him. His hair is dark as the hyacinth blossom, and his lips are as red as the rose of his desire. But passion has made his face like pale ivory, and sorrow has set her seal upon his brow. Oh, the prince gives a ball tomorrow night, murmured the young student, and my love will be with the company. If I bring her a red rose, she'll dance with me till dawn. If I bring her a red rose, I shall hold her in my arms, and she will lean her head upon my shoulder, and her hand will be clasped in mine. But there is no red rose in my garden, so I shall sit lonely, and she'll pass me by. She will have no heed of me, and my heart will break. Oh, here indeed is the true lover, said the nightingale. What I sing of he suffers. What is joy to me, to him is pain. Surely love is a wonderful thing. It's more precious than emeralds and dearer than fine opals. Pearls and pomegranates cannot buy it, nor is it set forth in the marketplace. It may not be purchased of the merchants, nor can it be weighed out in the balance for gold. Oh, the musicians will sit in their gallery, said the young student, and they'll play upon their stringed instruments, and my love will dance to the sound of the harp and the violin. She'll dance so lightly that her feet will not touch the floor, and the courtiers in their gay dresses will throng around her. But with me she will not dance, for I have no red rose to give her. And he flung himself down on the grass and buried his face in his hands and wept. Why is he weeping? Asked a little green lizard as he ran past him with his tail in the air. Yeah, why indeed, said a butterfly who was fluttering about after a sunbeam. Why indeed, whispered a daisy to his neighbor in a soft voice. He's weeping for a red rose, said the nightingale. For a red rose, they cried. How very ridiculous. And the little lizard, who was something of a cynic, laughed outright. But the nightingale understood the secret of the student's sorrow. She sat silent in the oak tree and thought about the mystery of love. Suddenly, she spread her brown wings for flight and soared into the air. She passed through the grove like a shadow, and like a shadow, she sailed across the garden. In the center of the grass plot was standing a beautiful rose tree, and when she saw it, she flew over to it and lit upon a spray. Give me a red rose, she cried, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook its head. My roses are white, it answered, as white as the foam of the sea, and whiter than the snow upon the mountain. But go to my brother who grows round the old sundial, and perhaps he will give you what you want. So the nightingale flew over to the rose tree that was growing by the old sundial. Give me a red rose, she cried, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook its head. My roses are yellow, it answered, as yellow as the hair of a mermaiden who sits upon the amber throne, and yellower than the daffodil that blooms in the meadow before the mower comes with his scythe. But go to my brother who grows beneath the student's window, and perhaps he will give you what you want. So the nightingale flew over to the rose tree that was growing beneath the student's window. Give me a red rose, she cried, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook his head. My roses are red, it answered, as red as the feet of the dove, and redder than the great fans of coral that wave and wave in the ocean cavern. But the winter has chilled my veins, and the frost has nipped my buds, and the storm has broken my branches, and I shall have no red roses this year at all. One red rose, that's all I want, cried the nightingale. Only one red rose. Is there no way by which I can get it? There is a way, answered the tree. Oh, but it's so terrible I dare not tell it to you. Tell it to me, said the nightingale. I'm not afraid. If you want a red rose, said the tree, You must build it out of music by moonlight and stain it with your own heart's blood. You must sing to me with your breast against a thorn. All night long you must sing to me, and the thorn must pierce your heart, and your lifeblood must flow into my veins and become mine. Death is a great price to pay for a red rose, cried the nightingale, and life is very dear to all. It's pleasant to sit in the green wood and to watch the sun in his chariot of gold and the moon in her chariot of pearl. Sweet is the scent of the hawthorn, and sweet are the bluebells that hide in the valley and the heather that blows on the hill. But love is better than life, and what is the heart of a bird compared to the heart of a man? So she spread her brown wings for flight and soared into the air. She swept over the garden like a shadow, and like a shadow she sailed through the grove. The young student was still lying on the grass where she left him, and the tears were not yet dry in his beautiful eyes. Be happy, cried the nightingale, be happy, you shall have your red rose. I will build it out of music by moonlight and stain it with my own heart's blood. All that I ask of you in return is that you will be a true lover, for love is wiser than philosophy, though she is wise, and mightier than power, though he is mighty. Flame-colored are his wings, and colored like flame is his body. His lips are sweet as honey, and his breath is like frankincense. The student looked up from the grass and listened, but he couldn't understand what the nightingale was saying to him, for he only knew the things that are written down in books. But the oak tree understood and felt sad, for he was very fond of the little nightingale who had built her nest in his branches. Sing me one last song, he whispered. I shall feel very lonely when you're gone. So the nightingale sang to the oak tree, and her voice was like water bubbling from a silver jar. When she had finished her song, the student got up and pulled a notebook out and a lead pencil from his pocket. She has form, he said to himself as he walked away through the grove. That cannot be denied to her. But has she got feeling? I'm afraid not. In fact, she's like most artists. She's all style without any sincerity. She wouldn't sacrifice herself for others. She thinks merely of music, and everybody knows that the arts are selfish. Still, it must be admitted that she has some beautiful notes in her voice. What a pity it is that they don't mean anything or do any practical good. And he went into his room, he lay down on his little bed, and he began to think of his love, and after a time he fell asleep. When the moon shone in the heavens, the nightingale flew to the rose tree and set her breast against the thorn. All night long she sang with her breast against the thorn, and the cold crystal moon leaned down and listened. All night long she sang, and the thorn went deeper and deeper into her breast, and her lifeblood ebbed away from her. She sang first of the birth of love in the heart of a boy and a girl, and on the topmost spray of the rose tree there blossomed a marvelous rose, petal following petal, as song followed song. Pale was it at first, as the mist that hangs over the river, pale as the feet of the morning, and silver as the wings of the dawn. As the shadow of a rose in a mirror of silver, as the shadow of a rose in a water pool, so was the rose that blossomed on the topmost spray of the tree. But the tree cried to the nightingale to press closer against the thorn. Press closer, little nightingale, cried the tree, or the day will come before the rose is finished. So the nightingale pressed closer against the thorn, and louder grew her song, for she sang of the birth of passion in the soul of a man and a maid. And a delicate flush of pink came into the leaves of the rose, like the flush in the face of the bridegroom when he kisses the lips of the bride. But the thorn had not yet reached her heart, so the rose's heart remained white, for only a nightingale's heart's blood can crimson the heart of a rose. And the tree cried to the nightingale to press closer against the thorn. Press closer, little nightingale, cried the tree, or the day will come before the rose is finished. So the nightingale pressed closer against the thorn, and the thorn touched her heart, and a fierce pang of pain shot through her. Bitter, bitter was the pain, and wilder grew her song, for she sang of the love that is perfected by death, of the love that dies not in the tomb. And the marvelous rose became crimson, like the rose of the eastern sky. Crimson was the girdle of petals, and crimson as a ruby was the heart. But the nightingale's voice grew fainter, and her little wings began to beat, and a film came over her eyes. Fainter and fainter grew her song, and she felt something choking her in her throat. Then she gave one last burst of music. The white moon heard it, and she forgot the dawn and lingered on in the sky. The red rose heard it, and it trembled all over with ecstasy and opened its petals to the cold morning air. Echo bore it to the purple caverns in the hills and woke the sleeping shepherds from their dreams. It floated through the reeds of the river, and they carried its message to the sea. "Look, look," cried the tree, "the rose is finished now." But the nightingale made no answer, for she was lying dead in the long grass with the thorn in her heart. At noon, the student opened his window and looked out. "Why, what a wonderful piece of luck," he cried. "Here is a red rose. I have never seen any rose like it in all my life. It's so beautiful that I'm sure it has a long Latin name." And he leaned down and plucked it. Then he put on his hat and ran up to the professor's house with the rose in his hand. The daughter of the professor was sitting in the doorway, winding blue silk on a reel, and her little dog was lying at her feet. "You said that you would dance with me if I brought you a red rose," cried the student. "Here is the reddest rose in all the world. You'll wear it tonight next to your heart, and as we dance together, it will tell you how I love you." But the girl frowned. "Oh, I'm afraid this won't go with my dress," she answered. "And besides, the Chamberlain's nephew has sent me some real pearls, and everybody knows that jewels cost far more than flowers." "Well, upon my word, you're very ungrateful," said the student angrily, and he threw the rose into the street, where it fell into the gutter, and a cartwheel went over it. "Ungrateful?" said the girl. "I tell you what, you are very rude. And after all, who are you anyway? Only a student. Why, I don't believe you even got silver buckles on your shoes, as the Chamberlain's nephew has." Then she got up from her chair and went into the house. "What a silly thing love is," said the student as he walked away. "It's not half as useful as logic, and it doesn't prove anything. And it's always telling one of things that are not going to happen and making one believe things that are not true. In fact, it's quite unpractical. And, as in this age, to be practical is everything, I shall go back to philosophy and study metaphysics." So he returned to his room, pulled out a great dusty book, and began to read. "Lorenzo. Lorenzo, wake up, Lorenzo. Lorenzo,
What?
I'm finished with the story."
Oh, I was having a crazy dream.
"A crazy dream?"
Yes, it was about a stupid young man who had no understanding of love.
"Oh, Lorenzo." Well, it sounds like it's time to say goodbye. But hey, listeners, before we go, I'm not sure how you're finding this podcast, but it should be showing up on the major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. Now, I myself am a podcast addict. I listen to podcasts all the time, and I listen both on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube. Now, if you like to listen at night and you want like a soothing visual backdrop for the audio, go ahead and check out our channel on YouTube. It's the Vintage Century Idle Hour. If you just want the sound, well, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of the other platforms, those will work as well. Well, thanks for hanging in there with us. Have a great week. And when your week is done, come on back and see us, won't you? Say goodbye, Lorenzo.
Goodbye, Lorenzo.